Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Wednesday, July the 12th, race number 7 at Delaware Park. Delaware certified allowance on the turf going 7.5 furlongs, 2 turns. Let's take a look at this field. We've got 11 entered in here, but a couple of main track onlys. The number 7 Marvelous, the number 9 Intrepid Daydream, who is the 3-5 morning line favorite, would obviously be very dangerous if this race is washed off of the turf. Please click or scan the QR code for Race of the Day access on your mobile device, which includes free Formulator Pass performances. Mike, Downtown Katy, 5-2 on the morning line. A one-run closer is going to need some pace.
Hard to take too short a price on a horse like her, just because of her running style, but pretty hard to knock her form since Mike Gorham has taken over the training. She just shows up and runs pretty well every single time. Gets a little class relief here, I think.
But as we mentioned, there is concerns because she doesn't have speed and she needs a little bit of help. And as we take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector, it's a blue bar situation that could favor front runners. You do see the LP designation over the chicklet of the number 3 Downtown Katy, which indicates she has the fastest late pace rating. But there's a chance that the number 6 Murph could get loose on the lead. White Knuckle Flyer is stretching out in distance. The good news about the horse like the number 8 Brummagem is great tactical speed.
I like that about that horse as well. She's up in class in this race, so maybe that will make a difference. I do think she's going to get the right kind of trip in here, win or lose, Dan. I can certainly see the 6 making the lead, though. She showed good speed last time.
Third start off of a short layoff for the number 1 Chironi, who was listed as a Belmont vet scratch on July the 2nd. Last time out at Monmouth, first level allowance race, in pretty tough. The third finisher came back to place at this level at Laurel with a 72 buyer. Now in against Delaware certified, but has just been stuck in the first level allowance condition for a long time. And I have a feeling the reason why she hasn't dropped in for a tag is because she's stakes placed.
Yeah, she has to have been pretty frustrating for these connections, Dan, because she actually ran some really good races as a 2-year-old. Right after that, a little bit of an upset in the debut. She ran really well again in a couple of stakes races after that, and she just hasn't won a race since then. And they've tried just about everything with her. They tried sprinting her at Saratoga. They tried to go really long with her at the end of last year. They even tried dirt at the beginning of this year, and nothing has worked. As you mentioned, they went out of town last time to Monmouth, and she bumps into a Chad Brown odds-on favorite in there. Not that, she ran well in that race. I don't know. Maybe this is finally the right spot, Dan. I do think there's some talent here. I don't really want to give up on her yet. And if she's around that morning line price, I'll probably try to use her.
I think Jockey Carol Cedeno is going to try to get aggressive with the number 2 Izzy Bella, as she did 2 starts back, her most recent race on the turf. Let's watch that effort at Pimlico. She went to the lead. Carol tried to burst away through a third quarter in 24 and change, and she actually had a pretty clear lead, but the favorite's just going to run her down in the shadow of the wire. This race produced 2 next out dirt winners. She ran pretty well in this race. She's very consistent.
She ran fine in here. I'm starting to get the feeling, when I look at her PPs overall, Dan, that she is a horse who wants to be on the early lead. So I do think they'll probably just try to come out of there running and maybe try to make the lead with her in here. And we'll see if it makes a difference. Her races, her turf races in particular, when she does make the early lead, she runs pretty well.
Downtown Katy, the number 3, 5-2 on the morning line, has hit the board in her last 7 races, I believe, but 2 wins only because of her running style. Let's watch her most recent race. First level allowance at Laurel, and she tries to wind up into it with this 4-wide bid. She must have fallen about 15 lengths behind it after the opening quarter mile. She came with an okay kick to finish third. She did get some pace to run at. I thought this race was okay. I thought her last race before that, 2 starts back, was okay. She rallied through some minor traffic to finish second that day.
Yeah, typical stuff here from her. She sits back and tries to make one run. I feel like that was just a better field than the one she's going to face in this Wednesday race of the day, though, Dan. So I think the class relief works for her. Every start since Gorham claimed her last June, every start for these connections, including the 2 wins, she just hits the board every single time except once. And when she didn't win that race last August here on this turf course, she was probably best that day. She got totally blocked through the stretch in a closer's race and wound up finishing behind a horse who's back in here. I mean, she's just very consistent. I won't knock her. I also probably don't want to bet her at a short price.
Case or two could be made for the number 4, My Thoughts. This horse earned a stakes win against Restricted Company at Penn National last year and showed decent tactical speed that day. Now she's going to be making her 3rd race back of the year, and I wonder if she's just racing herself back into shape. She caught 2 tough stakes fields in her first 2 races back, so from a class standpoint, this could be the first race of the year where she has a legitimate shot.
That's kind of how I looked at her too, Dan. I mean, it feels like, sometimes it's just about, finding the right kind of race to run in. And maybe My Thoughts has finally found the right kind of a race to run in here. The last, that allowance win at Penn National last July, she ran perfectly fine in that race off of a good trip to get the job done. And she's won a restricted stakes since then. I just feel like this is the right spot for her. And I'd be surprised if she goes off at 10-1 in this race. But if she does, I think that's a very good price.
The 5 Masala is 12-1 on the morning line, and you can make the argument that her last race she needed. It was her first start off of a lengthy layoff. She raced wide while the winner Brummagem was able to save ground and get a pretty good trip all the way around. So I could see her taking a step forward. She always seems to do well over this turf course.
And she doesn't have to be, sort of a one-run closer either. I sort of appreciated that about her. The more I looked at her, the more I feel like this might be a little bit of a tough spot for a horse like her, because I don't think her best race is as good as maybe the best race of some of the others. But maybe she works out the right trip in here and can be there at a price.
Murph, the number 6, won a little restricted stakes race on the dirt at Delaware earlier in her career when she was trained by Brittany Russell. Claimed for 25. By these connections, she has not run as well. Her last 3 races just not good at all on the turf. She did show speed last time out. She should show speed here, but her form, you got to question it.
Yeah, you got to be very concerned about that. Ran some okay races for a really high percentage trainer on turf last year, Dan. But since these connections have taken over, her form just hasn't been there. She hasn't been competitive in any of her 3 starts so far.
The number 7, Madalis, has entered main track only. If this race is washed off of the turf, you have to respect her chances. But we will move on to the number 8, Brummagem, whose victory last time out came with just a beautiful trip and ride. And her tactical speed allows her to get these sort of trips. Now, this is just a $16,000 non-winners of 3 life claimer. She's settled in the pocket behind the speed. She's going to ease out into the stretch, and she's going to find a nice seam in between horses and shoot on through.
I like this performance. I like that she showed that she can sit behind horses and still come with a really game finish. This is the favorite on the lead here, Dan, and she's going to gun this horse down up the inside. I like this effort from her. You have to be a little concerned with this move up in class. It's at least worth noting that she's been entered twice since that race against $16,000 claimers and against like $25,000 claimers, and they both got rained off. And so now she turns up here, and it's probably just a tougher race. But how do you knock her overall turf form? Every single turf start is good. And those 2 wins here last year, August and September, they were pretty good performances, sort of taking no prisoners up on the pace. That maiden win, that pace was fast for that level, and she was right there the entire time.
Intrepid Daydream's the number 9. She's entered main track only. You see the short price. She's 3-5. She earned a 91 buyer speed figure on dirt at Delaware in her 3rd lifetime start. If this race is washed off, she's obviously the horse to beat. We'll move to White Knuckle Flyer now. The Capuanos have basically spent White Knuckle Flyer's career in short races. Now they're going to stretch her out around 2 turns as she drops out of the Jamila, a sprint at Laurel Park. This is her 3rd start back. I don't love the form she's come back in, but she certainly fits with these horses. And if she stays the 2 turns, she's a very logical contender.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with all that stuff. I mean, I hate playing horses stretching out like this for the first time, especially when they've spent so much time sprinting without even trying it. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I think it's pretty clear just from taking her turf form at face value that if she can stretch out and run her good race going this distance, she's supposed to be pretty tough in here.
The horse with arguably the most upside in the field already comes in with a strong turf buyer speed figure. The 11 Nisi Marie earned a 77 buyer in her turf debut in this race at Parks. Only her 3rd lifetime start, and she showed good speed. The pace was very slow. There was no closing going on. She sat just off of the early leader. She takes the lead and she goes about her business, but she showed she handles the turf just fine. Butch Reed, very high percentage trainer in the Mid-Atlantic area, finds a Delaware certified race for her first start out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really knock this performance. She just looked like she handled the turf really, really well in there, handled the stretch out really, really well in there. It's hard to gauge how good that field was, Dan. The horse that she beat there, that finished second to her, who was the favorite, she didn't really have any turf form either, and nobody else really did any running in there. So I don't know. I thought that made it hard to judge. I still thought she looked pretty good winning.
Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. It is opening week at Saratoga. Lots of great stakes races coming up, and we'll analyze them all on DRFTV. Top pick time for our Wednesday race of the day. Mike, you're going with Brummagem. I love her tactical speed. She's going to have to prove it against allowance horses. She has upside as well.
It's a tougher race. I do think she could improve again, though, Dan. I like every one of her turf starts, and I just thought she'd get a good trip in this race at perhaps a fair price.
I'm hoping that the pace isn't very fast because I think the 11 Nisi Marie is adaptable. I just think she's very well spotted in this Delaware certified race. I take the 7-2. I'm not sure I would take much less because she is going to have to prove it off of a good trip victory. 8-1-3-4 for Mike, 11-3, 10-2 for me. It's the Wednesday race of the day, the 7th at Delaware. Good luck.